The day I realized an airport employee stole my AirPods. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even demand them back. I just opened my phone and watched. Because thanks to one tiny feature called Find My, I could see exactly where they were. I watched them leave the plane. I watched them enter employee-only areas. And then I watched them go home with someone who thought I'd never do anything about it. For 6 months, I let them use my stolen headphones. And every single time they put them in their ears, I reminded them they weren't theirs. If you've ever had something stolen and felt completely dismissed, this story is going to hit home. And if you believe karma sometimes needs a little assistance, make sure you're subscribed. Because tonight's story isn't loud revenge. It's patient. It's controlled. And it might be the pettiest thing I've ever done. 6 months ago, I had a layover in Houston. It was supposed to be routine. I travel often, and airports blur together for me now. Recycled air, overpriced coffee, that constant hum of rolling suitcases. I had flown in from Arizona. It had been a long morning already. I remember feeling tired but relieved when we landed. Just one more flight and I'd be home. I was seated near the back of the plane. Aisle seat. I always choose aisle seats. I like the illusion of control, the ability to stand up when I want, not feel trapped. When the plane landed, everyone did that awkward half stand where no one can actually move yet. The guy in the window seat squeezed past me, brushing against my jacket. I didn't think anything of it. I grabbed my bag, checked my phone, followed the slow shuffle off the plane. It wasn't until I was halfway to security for my connecting flight that I instinctively reached into my jacket pocket. Empty. I froze. Other pocket. Empty. My stomach dropped. No. No, no, no. I stepped to the side of the terminal, heart pounding in my ears, and started digging through my bag. Charger. Wallet. Lip balm. Nothing. My AirPods were gone. I opened the Find My app immediately. There they were. Still on the plane. Relief flooded me so fast I almost laughed. Okay. I just left them in the seat pocket. No big deal. I filed a lost item claim with United right away. I included everything: flight number, seat number, description of the silicone case, dark navy with a small scratch on the bottom, even the time I noticed they were missing. I set them to lost mode. If found, please call this number. I even added that I was happy to offer a reward. Because honestly, if someone had called me and said, "Hey, I found your AirPods," I would have gladly sent them enough money to buy their own pair. I get it. They're expensive. I assumed it would be handled. That was my first mistake. A few hours later, I checked again. They had moved. From the plane to somewhere inside the airport. Okay. That made sense. Probably the cleaning crew. Standard procedure. I wasn't worried. The next morning, they were no longer at the airport. They were at an apartment complex. I zoomed in on the map, staring at the tiny green dot like it would explain itself. Maybe someone took them home and would bring them back tomorrow. Maybe. But then the pattern started. Morning, apartment. Afternoon, airport. Evening, apartment. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like a commute. That's when it clicked. They hadn't been found. They'd been taken. By someone who worked there. Someone who cleaned that plane after we all deboarded. Someone who saw my AirPods, looked around, and decided they deserved them more than I did. That shift, from I misplaced them to someone stole them, changed everything inside me. Because when you lose something, you blame yourself. When someone steals from you, you feel violated. And worse? Dismissed. Mini cliffhanger. I thought once I gave the airline the address and the schedule, they'd fix it. Instead, they made it clear something else. They didn't care. When United finally responded to my emails, it was cold and corporate. They said since the AirPods had left airport property, there was nothing they could do internally. If I believed they were stolen, I needed to file a police report with Houston PD. I live in Arizona. I read the email 3 times. Nothing they could do? I had given them The exact residential address. The movement history from plane to employee area. The daily schedule of when the device traveled to and from work. And they were telling me to call the police in another state. I called customer service anyway. 42 minutes on hold. When someone finally answered, she sounded detached. I understand that's frustrating, ma'am.
Ma'am.
I calmly explained everything again. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't dramatic. I was organized. I can literally see the address where your employee took them. She repeated the script. Since the item left airport property, we are unable to assist further. I felt this strange mix of disbelief and humiliation. So your employee can take something from a plane, bring it home, and that's not your problem? Silence. Then, I'm sorry you feel that way. That sentence. It's designed to make you feel irrational. Like you're overreacting. My claim was closed the next day. Resolved. Resolved. I stared at that word and felt small. Not because of the AirPods, but because I had proof. And still, no one cared. For a few days, I tried to let it go. They're just headphones. Replace them. Move on. But I use Find My often for other devices. And every time I opened it, I saw them. Still there. Still commuting. Still being used. That's when I noticed something important. Sometimes the AirPods would show as in case. Other times, the earbuds would appear separately on the map. Which meant one thing. They were in someone's ears. The first time I saw them separate, something tightened in my chest. They were using them. Listening to music. Podcasts. Calls. With my phone number still sitting in lost mode. They had seen it. They had chosen not to call. And that's when I saw the button. Play sound. It's meant to help you locate lost items nearby. It emits a loud, high-pitched tone. I stared at it for a long time. This would be petty. Immature. But so was stealing from a passenger. So was ignoring a reward offer. So was dismissing me entirely. My thumb hovered. Then I pressed it. Playing sound. A few seconds later, the AirPods disconnected. Then reappeared. Now labeled in case. I burst out laughing. Because I could picture it. The sudden shriek. The flinch. The panic. The quick shove back into the case. For the first time since this started, I felt in control. What started as one impulsive tap turned into something far more intentional. And by month 3, it wasn't petty anymore. It was strategic. The first time I pressed play sound, it felt impulsive. The 5th time, it felt empowering. By the 10th time, it was calculated. I didn't spam it. I wasn't reckless. If I hit it every single time they used them, they might stop altogether. And that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted them to use them. I wanted them to get comfortable. And then I wanted to interrupt that comfort. So I started observing more carefully. I began tracking their routine the way you'd track a train schedule. Some days they left the apartment around 2:15 p.m. and arrived at the airport roughly 30 minutes later. Other days it was a late shift, leaving around 8 p.m. and returning after midnight. Sometimes the AirPods would sit untouched for days. Then suddenly, they'd light up on a random Tuesday afternoon. It became clear this person worked irregular hours, likely cleaning crew shifts. The back and forth movement was too consistent to be coincidence. I felt the same electric anticipation. That meant they were in someone's ears. Sometimes I'd wait. 5 minutes. 10. Let them settle into whatever they were listening to. Let them get immersed. And then, top. Playing sound. Every single time, within seconds, they disconnected. Back into the case. Silence. The consistency was almost funny. It wasn't a malfunction. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. And they knew it. The psychological shift. Around month 3, something changed inside me. This stopped being about the AirPods. I didn't even want them back anymore. The thought of wearing earbuds someone else had used for months? No thanks. This was about dignity. When the airline dismissed me, something small but important cracked. It's not the value of the item that hurts. It's the feeling of being ignored. Of being told, it's not worth our time. But every time I pressed that button and watched the immediate reaction, I felt seen. I wasn't powerless. They might have taken something physical from me, but I still had access. Still had control. And control is intoxicating when you've been stripped of it. The first workplace strike. One afternoon, I noticed the AirPods were active, at the airport, out of the case. During what looked like a shift, my heart started pounding. This was different. At home, it was private annoyance. At work, there were stakes. Co-workers, supervisors, embarrassment. I hesitated. Was this too far? But then I pictured them on that plane, seeing my AirPods in the seat pocket, glancing around, sliding them into their own pocket. No hesitation. No guilt. No thought about me at all. I pressed it. Even through a screen, I felt the impact. The status changed. Playing sound. 3 seconds. 5. Disconnect. Back in case. I imagined them mid-task. Maybe wiping down tray tables. Maybe vacuuming the aisle. And suddenly, that piercing, high-pitched shriek blasting directly into their ears. Maybe a co-worker turned. What was that? Maybe they muttered something about a glitch. Maybe they flushed with embarrassment. And then they shoved them back into the case. I leaned back in my chair, heart racing. That was the first time it felt like real revenge. Not destructive. Not illegal. But disruptive. If they had simply called me months ago, their life would be uninterrupted right now. Instead, they had a small, unpredictable consequence attached to their theft. The obsession question. There were moments I questioned myself. Late at night, scrolling absent-mindedly, I'd open Find My and check. Why am I still doing this? Is this unhealthy? Am I becoming the villain? But then I'd remember that email. I'm sorry you feel that way. That subtle condescension. That dismissal. And the anger would sharpen again. It wasn't obsessive. It was unfinished business. And the beauty of it? It cost me nothing. One tap. That's it. No confrontation. No escalation. Just a reminder. The disappearance. About 4 months in, something happened that genuinely rattled me. The AirPods vanished from the map. Not disconnected. Not offline. Gone. For 2 days, there was no signal. I told myself it didn't matter, but I kept refreshing anyway. Had they reset them? Sold them? Destroyed them out of frustration? I didn't miss the AirPods. I missed the leverage. That thread of connection. Then, on the second evening, they popped back up. Same apartment. Same building. Online. My stomach dropped with relief, and I hated that it did. Why did I care this much? Because this wasn't about plastic and speakers anymore. It was about narrative. They took something. They ignored accountability. And I refused to be erased from the story. The pattern tightens. By month 5, usage decreased. They'd go a week without touching them. Then 2. Then suddenly, on a random Saturday night, they'd appear separate again. Like Temptation 1. And I'd wait. Longer now. Sometimes 30 minutes. Let them forget. Let them relax. And then, top. Shriek. Disconnect. Every time. I imagined the hesitation building. The dread. The thought before putting them in. What if she's watching? Because by now, I was sure they knew. No device glitches that consistently for months. They knew the original owner was still connected. Still aware. Still unwilling to let it go. Mini cliffhanger. Then one night, they tried to break the connection entirely. And for a moment, I thought I had lost. It was a Saturday evening. The AirPods were active at the apartment. Separate. Out of the case. I watched quietly. 5 minutes passed. 10. I pressed play sound. Nothing happened. They didn't disconnect. The status still showed active. I frowned and pressed it again. Playing sound. Still nothing. Instead, the location flickered. Then started moving. They were leaving the apartment complex. Driving. Fast. My pulse spiked. Were they taking them somewhere to reset? An Apple store? Trying to wipe the device? The location updated twice more. Then suddenly, offline. Completely offline. My heart sank. Had I pushed too far? Was that the end? That night, I barely slept. Not because I missed the AirPods, but because I didn't want them to win. If they reset them, I'd lose access forever. And they'd finally have uninterrupted use. The thought irritated me more than I expected. The next afternoon, I opened the app. There they were. Back at the apartment. Online. Separate. Out of the case. I actually laughed. They hadn't reset them. They had probably just panicked. Maybe tried driving around to confuse the signal. Maybe thought going offline would scare me off. But they still wanted to use them. And that was their weakness. This time, I waited almost an hour. Let them settle in. Let them forget. Then I pressed it. Immediate disconnect. Back into the case. And in that moment, something inside me relaxed. I didn't need escalation. I didn't need police. I didn't need confrontation. The point had already been made. The slow fade. Over the next few weeks, usage became rare. Very rare. Sometimes a whole month would pass. Then, like clockwork, one random evening, they'd try again. Maybe thinking enough time had passed. Maybe hoping I'd moved on. I hadn't. Top. Shriek. Silence. Eventually, they stopped using them entirely. The AirPods now sit in that apartment, unmoving for weeks at a time. I check occasionally. Not obsessively. Just enough to know they're still there. A silent reminder on both ends. Resolution and reflection. I never got them back. And I don't want them back. What I wanted was acknowledgement. Accountability. Instead, I created consequence. Small. Petty. But consistent. They could have called. They could have returned them. They could have taken the reward. Instead, they chose entitlement. And I chose patience. Sometimes revenge isn't explosive. It's quiet. It's one tap on a screen. It's the knowledge that every time they tried to enjoy what wasn't theirs, they couldn't. And honestly, that's enough for me. If you've ever been dismissed over something small that didn't feel small to you, I hope this story reminded you that you're not powerless. Would you have done the same? Or would you have let it go? Let me know in the comments.